A war hero broke Steve Harvey live on air, and he regretted his words just seconds later, proving that sometimes the most powerful moments in television happen when raw human pain collides with genuine compassion, and that true strength is revealed not in the ability to remain composed, but in the courage to admit when our hearts have been completely shattered by someone else's sacrifice and suffering. It was a live Tuesday afternoon broadcast in March 2024, and Steve Harvey was hosting what he anticipated would be a routine episode of his daytime talk show, focusing on American heroes among us. The show was being broadcast live to millions of viewers across the country, and Steve had prepared to interview several guests who represented different forms of service and heroism in their communities. Steve had always felt comfortable conducting live interviews, drawing on his decades of experience in television and his natural ability to connect with people from all walks of life. He prided himself on maintaining professional composure while showing genuine empathy for his guests, and he had developed techniques for managing emotional interviews without allowing his own feelings to overwhelm the conversation. However, nothing in Steve's extensive broadcasting experience had prepared him for the guest who was about to join him on stage, or for the story that would completely destroy his professional composure and leave him emotionally devastated in front of a live national audience. The guest who would create this unprecedented moment was Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, a 32-year-old Marine Corps veteran who had been invited to appear on the show as part of the American Heroes segment. Maria had served 2 combat deployments in Afghanistan and had recently been nominated for a civilian award recognizing her volunteer work with veteran families in her community. What Steve and his production team didn't know was that Maria's story contained elements of tragedy and sacrifice that would prove too overwhelming for anyone to hear without being profoundly affected. The show's researchers had conducted their standard background interviews with Maria, but she had not shared the full extent of her experiences, preferring to focus on her current volunteer work rather than the traumatic events that had shaped her perspective on service and loss. Maria appeared to be a composed, articulate woman with the quiet confidence that characterized many military veterans. She was wearing a simple dress rather than her military uniform, and her demeanor was calm and professional as she prepared to discuss her transition from military service to civilian volunteer work. "Staff Sergeant Santos, welcome to the show," Steve said warmly as Maria settled into the interview chair. "Thank you for your service to our country, and thank you for continuing to serve veteran families through your volunteer work." "Thank you for having me, Mr. Harvey," Maria replied, her voice steady and respectful. "I'm honored to be here and grateful for the opportunity to share some information about the important work that's being done to support military families." Steve could sense that Maria was carrying some emotional weight, but he attributed this to the natural seriousness that many veterans displayed when discussing their service. He began the interview with standard questions about her military background and her transition to civilian volunteer work. "Maria, tell our audience about your military service. What drew you to join the Marines?" "Mr. Harvey, I joined the Marines because I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself," Maria began, her voice filled with pride despite the underlying sadness that Steve was beginning to notice. "I came from a family where military service was seen as the highest form of patriotism, and I wanted to contribute to protecting the freedoms that we all enjoy." Maria went on to describe her deployments and the experiences that had shaped her understanding of sacrifice and service. "I served 2 tours in Afghanistan, and I was privileged to work with some of the finest people I've ever known," Maria continued. "Every day we worked to complete our mission while protecting each other and supporting the local communities that were trying to build better lives for their families." Steve was moved by Maria's articulate description of her service, but he could see that there was something deeper in her story that she hadn't yet shared. "Maria, Tell me about your volunteer work with veteran families. What motivated you to continue serving after your military career ended? This question prompted Maria to share information that began to reveal the true emotional weight she was carrying. Mr. Harvey, my volunteer work focuses on supporting families who have lost service members during deployment, Maria explained, her voice becoming quieter as she approached more personal territory. I work with Gold Star families to help them navigate the practical and emotional challenges that come with losing someone who was serving their country. Steve immediately understood the significance of Maria's work with Gold Star families, and he felt his heart begin to stir as he realized that her volunteer work was probably connected to personal experiences with military loss. Maria, that's incredibly important work. What gives you the insight and strength to help families through such difficult experiences? Maria paused before answering, clearly gathering her courage to share something that she had not discussed publicly before. Mr. Harvey, I understand what these families are going through because I lost my husband during our deployment in Afghanistan, Maria said, her voice beginning to break as she shared this devastating information for the first time on national television. Steve felt his chest immediately tighten as Maria revealed that she was a Gold Star wife herself, and he could see that the studio audience was also beginning to understand the depth of personal tragedy that had brought Maria to her volunteer work. Maria, I'm so sorry for your loss, Steve said gently, his own voice showing the emotion that Maria's revelation had stirred in him. Can you tell us about your husband? What Maria shared next was what completely destroyed Steve's professional composure and left him openly crying on live television in front of millions of viewers. Mr. Harvey, my husband was Sergeant First Class David Santos, and we were both deployed to Afghanistan at the same time, Maria began, tears forming in her eyes as she prepared to share the most painful part of her story. We had been married for 3 years, and we were both so excited to serve together and to start our family when we got home. Maria continued, her voice growing more emotional as she described the events that had changed her life forever. On February 14, 2022, David was killed by a roadside bomb while he was escorting a convoy of supplies to a remote outpost. He died doing what he believed in, protecting other soldiers and serving his country. Steve was already feeling his emotions building as Maria shared these heartbreaking details. But what she said next was what finally broke him completely. Mr. Harvey, the worst part is that I was 3 months pregnant when David died, and he never got to meet our daughter, Maria said, tears now streaming down her face as she shared this devastating detail. Our little girl, Sophia, is now 2 years old, and she'll never know her father except through the stories I tell her about the hero who loved her before she was even born. The moment Maria mentioned her daughter who would never know her father, Steve's professional composure completely collapsed. He began crying openly, unable to maintain the emotional distance that he typically preserved during difficult interviews. Maria, I can't, Steve said, his voice breaking as tears streamed down his face. I just can't imagine the pain you've endured. Losing your husband while you were pregnant, raising a daughter who will never know her father. Steve was so overwhelmed by the magnitude of Maria's loss and the strength she had shown in surviving and rebuilding her life that he found himself unable to continue the interview. The cameras continued rolling as millions of viewers witnessed this unprecedented moment of genuine human emotion from a host who was normally known for his ability to maintain professional composure. But what happened next was what Steve would later say he regretted more than anything he had ever said on television. Maria, I don't know how you do it, Steve continued through his tears. I don't know how you get up every morning and face a world without him. I don't know how you find the strength to help other families when you're dealing with such incredible pain yourself. As soon as the words left his mouth, Steve realized that he had made a terrible mistake. Instead of honoring Maria's strength and resilience, he had focused on her pain and suffering in a way that diminished the powerful example of courage and service that she represented. Steve immediately recognized that his words, while well-intentioned, had painted Maria as a victim, rather than celebrating her as the hero and leader that she had proven herself to be through her military service and her volunteer work with other Gold Star families. "Maria, I'm sorry," Steve said, wiping tears from his eyes as he tried to recover from his emotional breakdown. "What I just said was wrong. You're not someone to be pitied. You're someone to be honored. You've taken the most devastating loss imaginable and turned it into service for others who are facing similar tragedies." Steve's immediate recognition of his mistake and his willingness to correct it on live television demonstrated the authenticity and humility that his audience had always appreciated, but it also revealed the profound impact that Maria's story had on him personally. "Mr. Harvey, please don't apologize," Maria replied with grace and understanding that amazed everyone watching. "Your reaction honors David's memory because it shows that people understand the magnitude of what our military families sacrifice for this country." Maria continued, showing the same strength and composure that had carried her through the worst experience of her life. "Mr. Harvey, I don't want people to feel sorry for me," Maria said with conviction. "I want people to understand that David died for something he believed in, and that his sacrifice, and the sacrifice of all our fallen service members, should inspire us to live lives worthy of their example." Steve was amazed by Maria's ability to transform his emotional breakdown into a teaching moment about honor, sacrifice, and the responsibility that all Americans have to live up to the example set by those who have given their lives in service to their country. "Maria, you're absolutely right," Steve said, his composure beginning to return as he focused on Maria's strength rather than his own emotional response. "Your husband was a hero, you are a hero, and your daughter will grow up knowing that she comes from a family of people who dedicated their lives to serving others." The remainder of the interview focused on Maria's volunteer work and the practical ways that viewers could support Gold Star families in their communities. Steve was able to regain his professional composure, but the authentic emotion he had shown earlier had created a connection with the audience that made the rest of the conversation even more powerful and meaningful. The live broadcast of Steve's emotional breakdown and his immediate correction became one of the most viral moments in daytime television history. Millions of viewers were moved by the authentic human connection between Steve and Maria, and by the way that both of them had handled the unexpected emotional intensity of the moment. The video clip of Steve's breakdown and recovery was viewed over 20 million times within the first 48 hours after the broadcast, making it one of the most watched daytime television moments of the year. News outlets across the country covered the story, with many praising both Steve's authentic emotional response and Maria's gracious handling of the situation. Social media analysis showed that the clip had been shared by people across all demographic groups, with military families and veterans particularly moved by Steve's genuine reaction to Maria's story. Many Gold Star families commented that Steve's emotional response had helped them feel seen and understood in their grief, and that his immediate recognition of Maria's strength had honored the memory of their own fallen loved ones. Within hours of the broadcast, social media was filled with clips of Steve's reaction and Maria's gracious response. Many viewers commented that witnessing Steve's genuine emotional response had helped them better understand the magnitude of sacrifice that military families endure, and that Maria's strength had inspired them to consider how they could support veterans and Gold Star families in their own communities. The unexpected emotional intensity of the live broadcast also sparked discussions among television professionals about the value of authentic emotion versus professional composure in broadcast journalism and entertainment. Many industry experts praised Steve's willingness to show vulnerability and his immediate course correction when he realized his words had been inappropriate. Television critics noted that the moment demonstrated the power of live broadcasting to create genuine human connections between hosts and audiences, and that Steve's authentic response had been more powerful than any scripted segment could have been. The episode also sparked a national conversation about the challenges facing Gold Star families and the importance of providing ongoing support for the spouses and children of fallen service members. Veterans organizations reported significant increases in volunteers and donations in the weeks following Maria's appearance on Steve's show. Military support organizations across the country used clips from the interview to educate the public about the ongoing needs of Gold Star families and to recruit volunteers for programs that provide practical and emotional support for families dealing with the loss of military service members. 2 weeks after the live broadcast, Maria returned to Steve's show to provide an update on the response to her story and to discuss the increased support that veteran organizations had received from viewers who had been moved by her appearance. "Maria, how has your life changed since our last conversation?" Steve asked, clearly more prepared to handle the emotional weight of Maria's story. "Mr. Harvey, the response has been incredible," Maria replied. "The Gold Star Family organization I work with has received over $200,000 in donations from people who watched our interview, and we've been able to expand our support programs significantly." Maria continued, "But more importantly, hundreds of people have reached out to volunteer their time and skills to support veteran families. Your emotional reaction helped people understand that these families need ongoing support, not just sympathy." Steve was moved to see how his moment of vulnerability had inspired concrete action to support military families. And he realized that his initial regret about his emotional response had been misplaced. "Maria, I want to thank you for teaching me something important that day," Steve said. "I thought I had made a mistake by breaking down emotionally, but you showed me that authentic human emotion can be a powerful force for positive change when it inspires people to take action." 6 months after Maria's initial appearance on the show, Steve established the David and Sophia Santos Memorial Fund, which provides educational scholarships for children of fallen service members and supports programs that help Gold Star families maintain connections to their military communities. The Memorial Fund was launched with an initial donation of $500,000 from Steve's foundation, but it quickly grew through contributions from viewers who had been moved by Maria's powerful story and Steve's authentic emotional response to her incredible strength and sacrifice. Within the first year, the fund had raised over $1.2 million and had provided educational support for 45 children of fallen service members. The fund also created support programs that address the unique challenges faced by Gold Star families, including counseling services, financial planning assistance, and social programs that helped children and spouses maintain connections to military communities even after the death of their service member. Maria became a spokesperson for the fund and continued her volunteer work with expanded resources that allowed her to help even more families navigate the challenges of loss and rebuilding. Her work with the fund had given her a national platform to advocate for Gold Star families and to educate the public about the ongoing support these families needed. The fund also established partnerships with military organizations, educational institutions, and mental health providers to create comprehensive support networks for families dealing with the loss of military service members. These partnerships ensured that the support provided was both practical and sustainable over the long term. One of the most innovative and successful programs created by the fund was a comprehensive mentorship initiative that paired Gold Star children with military veterans and dedicated civilian volunteers who could provide ongoing guidance and emotional support as the children grew up without their military parents and navigated the unique challenges of Gold Star families. Today, Maria Santos continues to honor her husband's memory through her work with Gold Star families and her advocacy for increased support for military families facing loss. Her daughter Sophia is now 3 years old, and growing up with a clear understanding of her father's heroism and her mother's remarkable strength and resilience. Steve often reflects on the important lesson he learned from his emotional breakdown during Maria's interview. That authentic human connection sometimes requires us to abandon our professional facades and respond with the full depth of our humanity and compassion. Maria taught me that there are moments when professionalism is less important than authenticity, Steve often says when discussing the interview. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is allow ourselves to be completely affected by someone else's story, even if it means losing our composure on live television. Steve keeps a photo from Maria's follow-up appearance on his show in his office, showing Maria holding a picture of her husband while standing next to a display about the scholarship fund that honors his memory and supports his daughter's future. The story of Steve's emotional breakdown and immediate recovery demonstrates that true strength in broadcasting comes not from maintaining perfect composure, but from the genuine willingness to be genuinely moved by human stories and to use that deep emotional connection to inspire meaningful action. Maria's grace in handling Steve's unexpected emotional response and her ability to redirect the conversation toward positive action proved that heroes are defined not just by their service in combat, but by their continued dedication to helping others, even after experiencing devastating personal loss. The live television moment when Steve Harvey was broken by Maria's story became a powerful reminder that the most meaningful media moments happen when authentic human emotion meets genuine courage, and that true healing comes from transforming personal pain into service and advocacy for others who are facing similar challenges and losses. If this powerful story of authentic emotion, military family sacrifice, and the importance of supporting Gold Star families moved you, please subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to see that true strength comes from vulnerability and that supporting military families requires ongoing action, not just sympathy. Have you experienced the loss of a military family member or witnessed how authentic emotion can inspire community action? Let us know in the comments about ways we can better support Gold Star families and honor the sacrifice of fallen service members. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing stories about the beautiful things that happen when we choose to transform our emotional responses into meaningful support for those who have given everything for our freedom.